each round. Bob picks a more valuable item than Alice picks in the next round. So if we remove this first item that Alice picked from our picking sequence, then Bob gets at least half the value. Okay. So let's do a 10-minute break. And while we have our break, feel free to think about the divisible case when we have 3 agents. Okay, I'll see you in 10 minutes.
Isn't this not correct? There's no way that's correct. What am I looking for? No, makes sense. Why you should study algorithms of real world problems. Cool, real world problems, but we aren't even coding. We try. Okay, let's see. We'll just try to divert my eyes away. E.g. there's no objective valuation of the items, e.g. Yeah, so this is like you have an array of tuples. I'm gonna try to think of it numerically, because I don't understand it. Don't think I do. It's honestly better to do in VS Code. I freak. How do I add VS Code extensions onto one? That's the real question. No, I can do it in style.css. Doesn't matter. Got an array. What's going on? Is that how you do it? Probably. But before. Alice. Something like that. So, Alice first chooses 7. Alice chooses 7. Then Bob chooses the next most valuable item. Chooses 4. And Alice doesn't have a choice. It gets 1. So Alice gets 8. Bob gets 4. Yeah, Alice is happy because she's gotten friggin' 8 out of at least half. At least half the loot. No, but this... Is this even solvable? Actually, yeah. So 8 divided by 4? Wait. 7 is 12, so 8 out of 13. It's good for Alice, but this is 4 out of 14. It's not good for Bob. This is Alice. Oh frick, my Wacom. Please connect.
So, so you probably have seen things like this, like an algorithm running in time order n, well, with an equal sign, right? So its running time is also upper bounded by n squared. So this is something that you would see often. So maybe in the assignment you're being asked to design an n squared algorithm. You actually design one that's linear time, and then you say, well, linear time is no worse than n squared. Probably it indicates though that you have made a mistake, because maybe if we ask for an n squared algorithm, then probably it's not that easy to obtain a linear time algorithm. But this could happen, right? So many people write things like this with the equal sign. On this slide, I wrote it with the subset equal sign. Both are allowable. The subset sign emphasizes that, well, this is a class of running times. So the class of all linear running times is a subset. So if we actually write this.
Yeah, I could just make this 10.
Class of all linear running times is a subset of all the running times that are upper bounded by a quadratic function. Both notations are allowed, and this is probably more common. It has the weird property that, well, order n is equal to order n squared, but order n squared is not equal to order n, right? And this is something that's made clear with the subset notation. So we cannot write order n squared is equal to order n, so that's just false. The other thing is that I didn't explain how to obtain this running time, right? I can give you a reference. Somebody's going to post a question on Ed, and I'm happy to reply with the reference so you can find this. I did briefly mention that you can, or Alice can just go to all 2 to the power n ways of splitting the n items into 2 parts. Okay. Yeah, so that's just 2 clarification things. Now, what about 3 thieves if we have divisible items? So now we have an additional thief, Carol. And the question is the same, right? So for 3 thieves, we need to...
Each thief shares that is worth at least half the loot with the most valuable item removed. Oh, okay. Yeah. So with the most valuable item removed. Guess it makes sense in that sense. With indivisible. For some instances, a single item that both feed in. So. does that mean? What's an indivisible item? That's not even English. For some instances, a single item that bursts, it is not possible to split the item proportionally. Yeah, so if this is both 8, then it's impossible to split them proportionally, right? Oh, no, it's not. I think so. Is it? proportionality up to one item. Each shows plus one with the most valuable item removed. Yeah. Most valuable as in most valuable for them? Or most valuable?
Solution, which of Alice and Bob. And so whatever we allocate to Alice must be worth at least this much. Can this be achieved? So this is now a weaker property, and we are trying to achieve this weaker property. And there's a simple picking algorithm where, well, Alice and Bob alternatively pick their most valuable item. So Alice starts, let's say Alice starts, so she picks the most valuable item, we allocate it onto Alice, Bob looks at the remaining items, picks his most valuable item, etc. And we alternate between Alice and Bob. And when we can we argue that this will always satisfy this proportionality up to one item property. So let's look at the picking sequence. So first, Alice picks an item, and then Bob picks an item, and then Alice, and then Bob, Alice, Bob, etc. And let's look at the items that they pick. We know that the item that Alice picks first is the most valuable item, right? In particular, it's more valuable than the next item that's being picked, which Bob picks, right? Whenever Alice picks an item, it's the most valuable that's left, and it's always more valuable than the next item that's being picked. When Bob picks an item, it's always more valuable than the next item that's picked, right? From his perspective. So maybe I draw Bob's arrows on the bottom. So Bob's item is more valuable than the next one that's being picked.
Yeah.
And this one, right? So maybe
that makes sense.
So we can see that, well, if we look at the Alice's allocation, and we just compare the first two items that are picked, then, well, among these two, Alice always gets the most valuable from her perspective. And so we can look at this problem in rounds, right? In each round, two items disappear, Alice gets the most valuable one from her perspective. So we can...
What is Bird drawing on? What is this thing?
Happen, right? So many people write things like this with the equal sign. On this slide, I wrote it with the subset equal sign. Both are allowable. The subset sign emphasizes that, well, this is a class of 1 times. So the class of all linear 1 times is a subset. So if we actually write this, so we write that the class of all linear 1 times is a subset of all the 1 times that are upper bounded by a quadratic function. Both notations are allowed, and this is probably more common. It has the weird property that, well, order n is equal to order n squared, but order n squared is not equal to order n. Right? And this is something that's made clear with the subset notation. So we cannot write order n squared is equal to order n, so that's just false. The other thing is that I didn't explain how to obtain this running time, right? I can give you a reference. Somebody's going to post a question on Ed, and I'm happy to reply with the reference so you can find this. I did briefly mention that you can, or Alice can just go to all 2 to the power n ways of splitting the n items into 2 parts. Okay. Yeah, so that's just 2 clarification things. Now, what about 3 thieves if we have divisible items? So now we have an additional thief, Carol, and the question is the same, right? So for 3 thieves, we need to split the pile again so that each thief values their own pile as at least 1/3 of the loot. So now instead of half the loot, every thief needs to think that they got at least 1/3 of the loot.
I don't know.
So can we do the same thing? Basically, I guess we could ask Alice to divide the pile into 3. Alice will be happy with any one of those 3 piles, right? And now maybe Bob and Carol. So they could decide somehow about the 2 most valuable piles. Take these 2 piles, put them together, run the previous algorithm. So the algorithm for 2 thieves. So would that satisfy everybody? Well, they have to agree on which 2 piles to choose, and that might not be obvious. So basically, this describes the solution I just kind of proposed, but I didn't give all the details. So Alice splits the loot into 3 piles, which she thinks are of equal value. Then maybe Bob and Carol each choose which pile they want to take, but they could be actually smarter and divide these 2 piles again into different parts that satisfy them. So let's say the piles are fixed for now. So if they choose, so if Bob's most valuable pile among the three is different from Carol's most valuable pile among the three, then I think we can satisfy everybody because so Alice gives us 3 piles, right? Now we ask Bob what Bob's valuable pile is. Maybe it's the first one. We ask Carol what their most valuable. I'm not sure whether Carol is male or female, or what Carol's pronouns are. So Carol might choose the second pile. So that's Carol's most valuable pile. And now we can actually do this allocation and satisfy everybody, right? So Bob has the most valuable pile among a set of 3 piles. Carol has the most valuable pile among a set of 3 piles, and Alice was happy with any of the 3 piles, right? So that works. But that presupposes that Bob and Carol have different piles that are most valuable. So what if they actually choose the same pile as the most valuable one? So basically, so Bob and Carol both want the first pile. We can't give the first pile to both Bob and Carol. So what can we do? So maybe we can just give any of the remaining piles to Alice, and then Bob and Carol split. Let's say we give the third pile to Alice, Bob and Carol, then take these items in the first 2 piles, put them together, split them as in the two thief algorithm. So unfortunately, this doesn't work. Why not? Well, the situation could be like this. So Alice splits the loot into 3 piles, x, y, z, that are equal value from her perspective. Bob thinks that x is worth 50%, y is worth 40%, and z is worth 10%. And Carol thinks that, well, x is also the most valuable, and it's worth 50%, y is worth 10%, and z is worth 40%. Okay, basically, they will struggle to allocate something to Alice that's, from both of their perspectives, less than a third. So if we have the previous picture, so we have Bob and Carol, both want the first pile x. Now, but which one do they give to Alice? Well, Bob obviously thinks that z should go to Alice. Carol thinks that y should go to Alice. So in one case, Bob will object because now there's only 60% of the loot left once we give 40% from his perspective to Alice. So it might not be possible to satisfy Bob. If Alice instead picks pile z, then cap again into different parts that satisfy them. So let's say the piles are fixed for now. So if they choose, so if Bob's most valuable pile among the 3 is different from Carol's most valuable pile among the 3, then I think we can satisfy everybody because so Alice gives us 3 piles, right? Now we ask Bob what Bob's valuable pile is. Maybe it's the first one. We ask Carol what their most valuable. I'm not sure whether Carol is male or female, or what Carol's pronouns are. So Carol might choose the second pile. So that's Carol's most valuable pile. And now we can actually do this allocation and satisfy everybody, right? So Bob has the most valuable pile among a set of 3 piles. Carol has the most valuable pile among a set of 3 piles. And Alice was happy with any of the 3 piles, right? So that works. But that presupposes that Bob and Carol have different piles that are most valuable. So what if they actually choose the same pile as the most valuable one? So basically, so Bob and Carol both want the first pile. We can't give the first pile to both Bob and Carol. So what can we do? So maybe we can just give any of the remaining piles to Alice, and then Bob and Carol split. Let's say we give the third pile to Alice, Bob and Carol, then take these items in the first 2 piles, put them together, split them as in the two thief algorithm. So unfortunately, this doesn't work. Why not? Well, the situation could be like this. So Alice splits the loot into 3 piles, x, y, z, that are equal value from her perspective. Bob thinks that x is worth 50%, y is worth 40%, and z is worth 10%. And Carol thinks that, well, x is also the most valuable, and it's worth 50%, y is worth 10%, and z is worth 40%. Okay, basically, they will struggle to allocate something to Alice that's, from both of their perspectives, less than a third. So if we have the previous picture, so we have Bob and Carol, both want the first pile x. Now, but which one do they give to Alice? Well, Bob obviously thinks that z should go to Alice. Carol thinks that y should go to Alice.
Okay,
So in one
that
case,
makes sense.
Bob will object because now there's only 60% of the loot left once we give 40% from his perspective to Alice. So it might not be possible to satisfy Bob. If Alice instead picks pile Z, then Carol will object for the same reason. Right? So let's say we give Z to Alice, then, well, from Carol's perspective, basically 40% of the loot is gone. Now 60% needs to be shared between Alice and Bob, and this might not be possible in a way that gives at least 1/3 each. Okay, so it seems that we need a different algorithm. So basically what's happening is that, well, we give too much to Alice. So how can we solve this? So we need to ensure that both Bob and Carol think that at least 2/3 of the loot remain after Alice takes her part. So what can we do?
Sure.
So we have some wiggle room in the sense that, so in this example, well, if we give X to Bob, Bob thinks that he got 50% of the loot. So we have some wiggle room to give maybe less to Bob. So we try to give less to Bob and try sharing the rest between Alice and Carol. Okay. So what's our algorithm in more detail? Well, we start in the same way. Alice makes a pile, X, which she believes is worth 1/3 of the whole loot. She could also make these 3 piles that are worth 1/3 each. The important thing is that X is worth 1/3 of the loot from her perspective. Then she asks Bob whether he agrees that, well, X is at most 1/3 of the loot.
Items. So it's not discrete?
If Bob says yes, then he would be happy to split the remainder, so everything except X, with Carol. So we need to ask Carol the same thing. Carol, do you agree that X is worth at most 1/3? Let's take the last point first. So in the last point, we had that Alice made this pile X, which is worth exactly 1/3 from her point of view. She asked the other two whether they agree that X is worth at most 1/3 of the loot. If they both agree, then Alice can take X, and Bob and Carol can split the rest, which from both of their points of view is worth at least 2/3. And then we can use the two-thief algorithm. Okay, but what if one of them says no? Let's say Carol says no. Carol says, no, X is worth definitely more than 1/3. But then we can give this X to Carol. Carol thinks it's worth more than 1/3. Carol is happy. Alice thinks that X is worth 1/3, and Bob thinks it's worth at most 1/3. So Alice and Bob are happy to split the rest, because from both of their points of view, the rest of the loot, so everything minus X, is worth at least 2/3 of the whole loot. So they can now use the two-thief algorithm to conclude. So we handled the case where, so Alice makes this pile X, and we handled when Bob says yes. So it could be the case that Bob says no. So then we have the case that Alice values the pile X as 1/3, and Bob believes it's more than 1/3. Now, what we will do is, we ask Bob to trim the pile. So we ask Bob to make the pile X smaller until Bob believes it's exactly 1/3 of the total. So now Alice thinks it's worth less than 1/3. Bob also thinks it's valued at 1/3. So that means that. So one thing it means that so Alice is happy to split the remainder of the loot with anyone, because the remainder is worth more than 2/3. And now we are back to what we had before. So we have that in, how do we write it? So we might say the value from Alice's perspective is less than 1/3. The value from Bob's perspective is equal to 1/3. So we have one thief who thinks it's worth less than 1/3, another thief who thinks that it's worth exactly 1/3. So that's exactly what we had here. Here we had that Alice. So Bob agreed that X is worth at most 1/3, and Alice made this pile that's worth exactly 1/3. Right? So now Alice's and Bob's roles are inverted. And we can proceed exactly the same way as before with Alice's and Bob's roles inverted. So Bob will ask Carol whether she thinks that, Carol is female apparently, whether she thinks that X is at most 1/3. If Carol says no, then Carol takes X, and Alice and Bob split the rest, as in the two-thief algorithm. If Carol says yes, then Bob takes X, and Alice and Carol split the rest. Okay. So the trick that we needed is that, well, we were in some conundrum, and so we had a situation where the trick that we needed is to ask Bob to make the pile smaller. So this is like an insight that we needed for this algorithm to work. Algorithms. It is often the case that, well, there's one or the other trick that you might need to find. You might not find it immediately. It might come to you when you try to go to bed, when you take a shower, when you have some off time. So that's why it's really important to confront yourself with the material well in advance. Because, well, if you look at the material just before the tutorial, you might not have this off time where this idea suddenly comes to you. Okay, so we had this algorithm that, so we divided into several cases, and in each case we could basically reduce it to the true thief problem. Right? Now, when you try to generalize this to n thieves, you will again see that, well, when trying to generalize to n thieves, you will again need to reduce it to the n minus 1 thief problem.
Huh? Where did
Like you have
this
a nested
kind of come
recursion
from?
happening, even with 3 thieves, so this should give you an idea how to generalize it to an arbitrary number of thieves. Okay, we need to talk, so that was our first algorithm. And so what was special about this kind of algorithm was that we had to satisfy multiple thieves. So it's typically a kind of algorithm that you would encounter in multi-agent systems, where each agent has their own objectives, and we want to satisfy all the agents. But oftentimes we just have one objective that we want to achieve, one single objective, and the important thing is to find the fastest algorithm to achieve this one objective. We'll see another example later on where we have again multiple agents that want to achieve an objective. We need to talk a little bit about proofs because, well, question that often comes up is, so when do we need to give a mathematical proof that an algorithm that we have designed terminates and returns a correct solution? And the answer is only when it's not obvious. Because sometimes we design an algorithm, it's obvious that it's correct. There's actually, then we actually don't need to do a correctness proof. We only really need to do it when it's not obvious that the algorithm correctly solves the problem. So we really only use proofs or sometimes proof sketches because sometimes it's sufficient to give like an argument why this algorithm is correct. So you might not need to give a detailed proof, but just the main argument why maybe some property that the algorithm needs holds. As an example, we can consider the merge sort algorithm. So this is an algorithm for merging, for sorting an array of let's say integers, and it is a recursive algorithm. It's a divide and conquer algorithm.
Merge sort's recursive? Oh yeah, it is. I think yeah, I remember. It is recursive.
So let's say we have. So we need to sort an array of integers. And let's say the first index is L, the last index is R. If our array has size 1, then there's nothing to do. This is basically the base case of our recursion. Otherwise, we split the array into halves. So we select this index M, that's roughly the midpoint of our array. And then we apply the algorithm recursively to the left and to the right. And then, so once we have sorted these arrays recursively, these two arrays, then we merge them in order to obtain a sorted array index from L to R. So the first thing is, what is the running time of this? Well, the running time is not obvious, right? So what does the algorithm do? Well, it starts with, let's say, our array has length n, and then it creates two subarrays, each of them of size roughly half. I'll ignore the floor and ceiling functions for now. And then, well, for each of these two subarrays, it again divides them into halves, until at some point, the arrays have size 1. So how many times can we divide an array into halves before they have size 1? Well, it's roughly log n times, or log base 2 n times. So basically the height of this recursion tree will be size log n. Okay, now when we have two sorted arrays and we need to merge them into one sorted array, there's a way to do this in linear time. Basically, start from the smallest item on the left and from the smallest item on the right. And then compare them, take the smallest one, and then advance that index, etc. So you can see that, well, sorting everything on this level takes order and time. Sorting these two takes time and a half. Sorting these two again takes time and a half at this level of the recursion tree. Right? So at every level we spend linear time. The height is logarithmic. So in total, the running time is order n log n. So we have needed to spend some time explaining the running time. And well, I guess for the simple procedure, I think we are easily convinced that this produces a sorted array if we are merging two sorted arrays. So basically, there's nothing to do here for the correctness proof. The main thing for this algorithm is to analyze the running time. Sometimes it's not at all clear that an algorithm is correct. It might make some choices where, just first looking at it, it might be completely strange. Why does the algorithm make this choice? And that's the situations where we actually need to prove something. So we need to at least argue that, well, this is the reason why this algorithm actually works. Sometimes it's not even clear that the algorithm terminates. Sometimes it's not obvious that there's no infinite loop. So we might need to show that, well, actually our algorithm does make some progress, and it terminates in a polynomial number of steps. Sometimes number of steps is exponential, and we actually want to show that it's polynomial. Well, sometimes the obvious upper bound for the running time is exponential, and we want to show it's polynomial or linear or something like this. And sometimes it's not clear that it produces the correct result. What does clear mean? Well, it's something vague, and basically you will see a lot of examples where we explain things. Whatever we explain is not necessarily clear if we don't explain it in this course. And you can think of, well, if you discuss your solution with a fellow student in this course, will they think it's clear without any further explanations or not? So if it's not clear, then further explanations are needed. Okay. Yes. So sometimes we really need to prove something to figure out that the algorithm is actually correct, but we will not prove the obvious. Okay. So we'll see an example about the stable matching now. So what's the setting? So suppose we have n hospitals and n new doctors that have just graduated. Each hospital wants to employ exactly one new doctor. There's some generalizations where hospitals have multiple openings, but let's look at the simple case. Every hospital wants to hire exactly one doctor. Every hospital has a ranking over all the doctors. So, and they want to, ideally, employ their first ranked candidate, but they might not be able to, and so they have actually a preference list over all the doctors. Now the doctors on their side, they also have a preference over all the hospitals. So and let's say that we have access to all of this information. So for every hospital, we have the ranking of all the doctors. For every doctor, we have the ranking over all the hospitals. And now we'd like to assign the doctors to hospitals in order to make everybody happy. What does that mean? So make everybody happy might not be possible because it might be necessary
Everybody
to give
wants to hire the best
some
doctor.
doctor to a hospital that's not their preferred one, not their most preferred. So this assignment, we call it a matching. So a matching is an assignment of doctors to hospitals, so that every doctor has exactly one job, and every hospital hires exactly one doctor. So that's a perfect matching, actually. We match everybody. So a matching is one where every doctor gets at most one job, and no hospital gets more than one doctor. So a perfect matching is one where we assign everybody to a hospital. Now, how do we satisfy these preferences, or what is the actual property that we want? Because we know that we cannot perfectly satisfy everybody. Some hospital might not be able to get the most ideal candidate. Some candidate might not be able to work at the most preferred hospital. So instead, we aim to make nobody too unhappy. So one thing that could happen is that so we come up with an allocation, and now we can find a pair of a hospital and a doctor, such that, well, this particular hospital prefers this particular doctor over the current allocation, and the doctor also prefers that hospital over the current allocation. So that's the situation that we want to avoid. So formally, we say that the stable is matching. We say that the matching is stable, or perfect matching is stable, if there's no two pairs, so H, D, and H prime, D prime. So H and H prime are hospitals, D and D prime are doctors. So H actually prefers D prime, and H prime prefers D, but the current matching assigns D to H and H prime to D prime to H prime. So
What?
sorry, let me go back. The situation is rather like this. So H is, D is currently matched to H, D prime is currently matched to H prime. H prefers D over the current allocation. H prefers D prime over the current allocation. D prime prefers H over the current allocation. So both H and D prime would rather be matched to each other than to the current allocation. So that's a situation where that we don't want to happen because, well, now H and D prime can agree to basically exit the system and match to each other. So both H and D prime are not happy with our algorithm basically because they can achieve a better result. They can agree to just leave our allocation mechanism one off together and be happier than they were before. Okay. So our aim is to design an algorithm that produces a stable matching.
Stable matching.
Okay. So what do we have here? So here we have an example. We have two hospitals, H1 and D1. We have two doctors, D1 and D2. Hospital 1 prefers Doctor 1 over Doctor 2. Hospital 2 also prefers Doctor 1 over Doctor 2. So both of them actually prefer Doctor 1. if we look at the doctors, both of them prefer hospital 1 over
It's
hospital 2.
doubly linked.
So we can depict this as in this direct graph.
Choose
We
them
have the
both.
hospitals on the left, doctors on the right.
Yeah, mutual
Hospital
followers.
1 points to its most desired candidate. Hospital 2 also points to its most desired candidate. And same on the other side, the doctors point to their most preferred hospitals. So let's look at the following two allocations. D1 is matched to H1, D2 is matched to H2. So the question is, well, is there a pair of a hospital and doctor that would be better off being matched to each other than to the current situation? And clearly H1 cannot improve because H1 got its most preferred candidate. D1 cannot improve because it's matched to the most preferred hospital. H2 is not very happy, and D2 is not very happy. But for both of them, well, if, for example, D2 asks H1, would you rather have me than your current allocation? H1 would say, no, I'm happy. And same for H2. If H2 asks D1, well, would you rather be matched with me than with your current match? Then D1 would also say, no, I'm happy. So this situation is stable. The second situation is not stable because, well, we have this pair, H1 and D1, that would rather be matched to each other than to their current match. So they would say, H1 and D1 would both say, no, we want to be matched to each other. So we can make the second situation stable by swapping, and then, wait, no, sorry. So we can make the second situation stable by basically matching H1 to D1, and then the other two get matched to each other. This is a second example where the preferences look different. H1 prefers D1, H2 prefers D2, and D1 prefers H2, and D2 prefers H1. Here we have multiple stable matchings. You can see that by analyzing these, that no hospital and doctor are unhappy with this situation. So we have seen two different preference settings for two doctors and two hospitals. There's another two after symmetry that you can look at offline. Okay, so if we just have two hospitals and two doctors, can we design an algorithm for this simple situation? Yes, so this is an algorithm. So if the hospitals prefer different doctors, assign each hospital to their preferred doctor. And now nobody wants to swap, so the matching is stable. Also, if the doctors prefer different hospitals, give each doctor the hospital they prefer, and the situation is stable. If both hospitals prefer the same doctor and both doctors prefer the same hospital, that's actually our example one. What did we do? Well, this was stable matching for example one. So we matched the most preferred to each other and the other two to each other. And so the most preferred don't want to change, so this is also stable. Okay, can we generalize this to an arbitrary number of hospitals and doctors? Yes, and so this is the Gale-Shappy algorithm.
E? Where do we get E from?
So we have n hospitals and n doctors. We could just enumerate all the possible matchings and see as if each one if they are stable or not. Well, if we go through all possible matchings, that's actually an exponential number of matchings. Because, well, to see that this is an exponential number, or this is what the n factorial, so let's say we consider a fixed ordering of the hospitals, and then see with which doctors they are matched. And now we can take any ordering of the doctors, and actually every ordering of the doctors, let's say we have doctor 3, 1, 2, 5, and 4. So every different ordering of the doctors actually gives us a different assignment if we match them straight across. Right? So fixed ordering on the left, now every permutation on the right gives us a different matching. And well, since there are n doctors, this gives us n factorial many matchings. So we can go through all of them if we want a polynomial time algorithm. But so it's not even clear that the stable matching always exists. So there's two issues here. One is, well, does there even exist a stable matching necessarily? And the second one is, can you find one efficiently? So we have a polynomial time algorithm. So the Gale-Shappy algorithm resolves both of these questions because it gives us a polynomial time algorithm that is guaranteed to produce a stable matching. So how does the algorithm work? Well, it basically uses temporary allocation. So there's basically proposals going on. So a hospital might propose to a doctor, come join me. The doctor accepts on a temporary basis until they find a better hospital. Right? Until some better hospital proposes to them. So that's actually the whole algorithm. So hospitals do make proposals. So we look at one hospital at a time. A hospital proposes to a doctor. If they are at the moment unallocated, then they join the hospital on a temporary basis until they find something better. And then, well, this continues. A hospital always proposes to their most preferred candidate that hasn't rejected them yet. Hasn't rejected this hospital yet. And then, well, the candidate accepts. If this is a better offer than what they currently have. It might currently have no offer, in which case they accept. They might currently have a worse offer, in which case they also accept. If they have a better offer, then they reject. So we start with all hospitals vacant. So if there's a vacant hospital that has not yet offered a job to all doctors, so a hospital might have already considered every candidate, everybody has rejected them, in which case they don't get anybody. So the hospital picks, the hospital H offers a job to the highest ranked doctor and hasn't rejected them yet. It ignores all those doctors that it already has offered a job and where it got rejected, or where the candidate has left the hospital because they found something better. If the doctor is not yet employed, the doctor accepts the job. Otherwise, if the doctor is employed at a worse hospital, they also accept the job, leave the worst hospital, join this one. And, well, if the doctor currently has a better job, then they stay where they are. Right? So, let's have a look at an example of how this works.
What?
So what do we have? So on the left we have the hospitals. The big dots are the hospitals. On the left, on the right, you have the doctors, also with the big dots, and the small dots represent the preferences. The most preferred are on the left, and the least preferred are on the right. So the red hospital has the, what call it, turquoise doctor as their most preferred doctor. Etc. So let's run the algorithm. So it arbitrarily starts with some hospital, like the
orange one.
Purple one over there. The purple one identifies who's the most preferred doctor. That's the orange one. So it makes a proposal to the orange doctor. The orange doctor is currently unemployed. Every unemployed doctor accepts the first offer they're paying, temporarily, right? So this is a temporary match that happens. And then we go to the red hospital, makes a proposal to the most preferred doctor. Then the second match happens. For the third hospital, that's the green one, also a match happens. Fourth hospital,
the middle one.
match happens as well. Now, here's something interesting that happens, because now the yellow hospital also makes a proposal to the first doctor. They already have a job, but they actually prefer the yellow hospital to their current match. So this doctor actually switches.
Wow, unloyal.
And then, well, the last hospitals, well, it has lost its most preferred candidate, so it goes to the next candidate, offers that one a job. And this candidate actually accepts the job because it's their most preferred hospital. So kind of we have fixed this match because, well, this doctor can never improve. The red hospital doesn't have a doctor yet, so they make a proposal to the next most preferred doctor,
some labels on this
who doesn't have a job to accept.
Yeah,
The first hospital makes an offer to the orange doctor, who currently has a match, and currently has a match that's better than the proposal that they're receiving right now. So the orange doctor actually rejects. And then the first hospital goes on to the next preferred candidate, etc. So this keeps happening until at some point everybody will have a job.
About Mr.
Purple
Yellow
steals a candidate,
Doctor.
green tries to steal a candidate, is unsuccessful, goes to the next preferred, steals that candidate. So the reason, so why does this produce a stable outcome?
Wow.
Actually, let's look at the very end. The video is made by Tor Husfeldt, a colleague of mine he's employed in both Denmark and Sweden. He has made this animation. So why can't a country improve this? It's basically,
What? The video ended. He said he was going to explain it. And the video ended. Bro, why did they use echo? What's going on? Anyways. I kinda get it. What do you mean up to symmetry? There are more cases to consider. Solve them. Up to symmetry. What does that mean? Is it stable actually? Because you choose hospitals at random. Don't you? Is it stable? Don't know. Let me see the thing again. So, yellow gets put with their last preference. That's very unfortunate. At least the hospitals are pretty happy in general. Yeah, if you put bro blue, bro, why do the colors change? Keep the colors the same, just highlight them. Someone's trolling. Okay. So if we picked red first, we would go to blue. We would have red at the bottom of their list. It would say yes, but whatever. Then you go to orange. Orange. Yeah, what? Isn't this like much better tearing than compared to this? Why was orange chose? This guy wants this guy, but he can't get him. This guy's this guy. This guy wants this guy, but he can't get him because this guy is with this guy. Oh, probably not. Or do something like that. This guy. This guy wants this guy. Bro, what is going on? I'm just trying to do the algorithm in my head. How long is this video? 8 minutes.
So I want to tell you about the stable marriage problem. What I really like about it is it's completely unlike the kind of mathematics that most people have seen in high school or in college even. There's no numbers involved. We're not computing anything, no calculations, no integrals.
No numbers?
No numbers.
Oh,
no numbers even.
I'm going then.
Let me pose the problem. So I'm going to play the role of a yenta. So let's say I live in a remote village and there are a bunch of young men and a bunch of young women, and it's in the village's interest that everybody gets married, everybody pairs off. We're only talking about heterosexual marriages today. That's actually really important to the mathematics, but let's leave that aside for now. And I get to arrange the marriages. I get to choose. I know all the young men and young women very well. I know what their preferences are, but it's really ultimately up to me. And my ultimate goal, my principal goal in arranging these marriages is stability. So I don't mean stability over time. People might grow apart, their preferences might change. But I mean instead the following scenario. Say I've arranged a marriage between this couple here, so this young man and this young woman. And then I've arranged another marriage here for another couple, another man, another woman. But suppose this woman prefers this man to the husband that I've assigned her, and this man simultaneously prefers this woman to his wife that I've assigned.
That's not good.
That's not good. That means that these two are going to say, to hell with this arrangement, and run off together. So that's what we want to avoid. So I'll say this situation is not stable. And then the question today is it possible, is it always possible to arrange stable marriages? So I want this instability that I've just described to never occur. So it's quite possible that this woman really dislikes the husband that I've assigned her. And so she in particular would prefer this guy, but he's maybe very happy with his wife. He prefers her to her. So she wants to trade, but he doesn't want to trade. So this is a stable configuration, even though not everybody's thrilled with the arrangement. Instability is if and only if two people simultaneously prefer each other to their assigned spouses. Any other
It's a different definition of
situation
stability.
is stable. That's the one we're trying to avoid.
How big a group are we talking?
Okay. I'm gonna write something down, I guess. What? I didn't get to read that. What's going on? To electron V. What the frick? How are we on Obsidian 1.4? To add property to a node, you can press Control plus colon. Control plus colon. What? Oh, so you don't actually open it. What? Who cares about that? Got networks. Let's make a new node. I think we'll just call it computer science. No, not a new node. Actually, oh, I feel like lab 3 for these ones. Huh? Why is it only 3 and 4? TCP runner. Why is it in Eric? Oh no. I probably just did something. Wait, lab 1 and 2 are here. Oh, but they're already. Oh, so I added them recently, probably. Let's clean this up a little bit. I can add that into the CS3331. I think it might already be in CS3331 actually. Yeah, it's all here. Even all the photos and stuff. Yeah, well, I can just delete these then. It's fairness.ptk. Pretty sure I can delete them. Algorithms. I guess, yeah, trees is kind of like an algorithm-y thing. I'm just graphs aren't necessarily an algorithm-y thing, but the way I've written it makes it an algorithm-y thing. Sorting algorithms. Hash tables. Yeah, it's a sorting kind of thing. Or we can just copy this whole file and chuck it into dot representation. Red.
Talking here.
I'm going to have no bounds on size whatsoever. So there could be, the 6 billion people that are on the planet, if we want, or, 10 men, 10 women in a remote village, and people can have any preferences whatsoever. I can't control what people feel in their own hearts. So it's a big question, and it's not at all obvious that the answer is yes. And furthermore, even if the answer is yes, there's a computational question. Maybe there is some stable marriage configuration out there in the universe, but I need to be able to find it too. I need a way to actually make the arrangements so that I can tell everybody who they're going to be spending the rest of their lives with. So the answer is yes, and the proof is constructive. There's an algorithm due to David Gale and Lloyd Shapley in a 1962 paper on college admissions and the stability of marriage that proves that this can always be done. And so I'd like to describe that algorithm to you now. This is an algorithm that you can program a computer to run, but I like to describe it as via a metaphor where the men and women are playing certain roles. So before we begin, each man and each woman rank the members of the opposite sex. So in other words, everybody submits a preference list, 1 through the end of how many, or who they'd like to be married to. So then on the first day of the algorithm, we'll have each woman proposes to her number 1 choice. So some of the men will receive multiple proposals, others will receive none whatsoever. So the ones with multiple proposals then make some rejections. So each man rejects all but his top suitor. So at the end of this step, we have what we'll call tentative engagements. So some women make proposals that aren't rejected yet, and those couples are tentatively engaged, but we'll see that the algorithm isn't quite finished just yet. So on day 2, each rejected woman, so each woman whose proposal was rejected the day before, proposes to her next best choice, regardless of whether he's free or not. So some men will receive new proposals, others won't receive any. And the men now have a chance to trade up. So maybe you had a tentative engagement from the day before, but you have a better suitor now, so you can break the previous engagement and make a new match. So again, each man rejects all but his top suitor. So this is why we said the engagements are tentative. If at any time a woman that he likes even better proposes to him, he's free to reject and break the previous engagement and become tentatively engaged to somebody he prefers.
So he can keep waiting for a better offer.
He can keep waiting for a better offer. Then on day
This is terrible for the women.
3, 4, well, you think that now, but wait till the end. So this is day 3, 4, 5, and so on. We just repeat this process. So any woman who is rejected the day before proposes to her next choice. And the men, again, have an opportunity to trade up. If they receive better proposals, they'll break the previous engagements and keep going. And then the claim is that this stops at some point. And furthermore, once this algorithm stops and the final engagements are stable in the sense we discussed previously. Let's see an example of how this whole process works. So what I've done here is I've created 4 hypothetical women, Charlotte, Elizabeth, Jane, and Lydia, and 4 hypothetical men with kind of funny names, Bingley, Collins, Darcy, and Wickham. And then for each person, I've listed preferences. So Charlotte prefers Bingley to Darcy, to Collins, to Wickham. Similarly for Elizabeth, Jane, and Lydia. And the men have preferences also. Bingley prefers Jane to Elizabeth, to Lydia, to Charlotte, and so on and so forth. So let's run the algorithm and see who ends up married to whom. So remember, on the first day, each woman proposes to her best choice. So Charlotte proposes to Bingley, Elizabeth to Wickham, Jane to Bingley, and Lydia to Bingley. So we'll see Bingley receives 3 proposals right off the bat from Charlotte, from Jane, and from Lydia. And Wickham receives one proposal from Elizabeth. Okay, Bingley right now has a choice. He prefers Jane to Lydia and Charlotte. So he'll reject these two. That is Lydia
I get the algorithm.
and Charlotte are both rejected. And at the end of the first day, we have two tentative engagements, Elizabeth to Wickham and Jane to Bingley. On the second day, Charlotte and Lydia, which were rejected the day before, make their proposals. So Charlotte proposes to Darcy. Darcy is proposed to by Charlotte. And Lydia proposes to Wickham. Wickham receives a proposal from Lydia. Now, Wickham was tentatively engaged to Elizabeth, but he likes Lydia better, so he's now going to reject Elizabeth, and she's back on the market. All right, so at the end of the second day, we have three tentative engagements, Charlotte to Darcy, Jane to Bingley, Lydia to Wickham, and Elizabeth is unengaged. So on the third day, she proposes.
That's a funny one. Pretty sure that's right. Yeah, 73 and 80. Also edit it in here. 73. No idea what I got in last three though. Probably 0, right? Oh. Simon 3, I guess just 0 out of 10. Sure, bro. I got an 80. That's kind of sad. I think I literally got half on that exam. Holy, I haven't coded in 4 weeks. That's pretty funny.
This time to Darcy. Darcy receives a proposal from Elizabeth, who he prefers to Charlotte, so she's rejected. And we have three tentative engagements again, Elizabeth to Darcy, Jane to Bingley, Lydia to Wickham. Now on the third day, Charlotte proposes to her next choice, which is Collins. You can see that Collins doesn't actually think very highly of Charlotte. He prefers Jane, Elizabeth, and Lydia, but he hasn't received any other proposals. He has no better option, so he says yes. And now the algorithm terminates because everybody is engaged.
That's fun,
First choice, fourth choice.
isn't it?
Yeah.
What?
All right, so now's the time for the mathematics. I'm going to describe a number of theorems. Now he is only going to reject her proposal if there's some other woman. I'll write W prime for some other woman.
Discuss on her note. I need the math bit.
All right, so now's the time for the mathematics. I'm going to describe a number of theorems, some of which we'll prove together and some of which I'll leave you to prove as exercises.
I'm not proving.
So the first theorem, we might call it theorem 0, is that this algorithm always stops. So this is a big problem for a computer. You need to make sure that the process always terminates, no matter what the preference is, no matter how big the marriage market. This I'm going to leave as an exercise for you to prove. But you'll notice that something special happened on the last day of the algorithm in this example, and that's characteristic of when the algorithm will stop. I'll leave that as a little hint, but it seems reasonable. There's only finitely many preferences. This is probably going to stop. Theorem 1 is the big one, which is that the algorithm finds stable marriages. Okay, and this is something that we can prove. So to show that the algorithm arranges stable marriages, we'll show that no girl can do any better, that no woman can trade for anyone that's better than her assigned match. So the husband that is assigned by the algorithm is the best that she can do. Okay? Well, so how do we see this? So each man a given woman prefers, so a fixed woman prefers, rejected her along the way. Yeah, because of the design of the algorithm, she starts with her first choice and is only rejected if that man that she likes best is proposed to by somebody he likes even better. So every woman or every man that she prefers rejected her because he traded up, because he's with a better match. So even though she might like to be with him.
And we see that, don't we? There, we see that there.
Yeah, absolutely. So Charlotte prefers Bingley, but Bingley is with someone he likes better than Charlotte. She also prefers Darcy, but Darcy's with someone he likes better than Charlotte. And that's why, even though Collins isn't one of her top choices, and in fact, she's not one of Collins's top choices, neither of them can do any better. So I think that's the proof, so we'll end it. Q ed, quod erat demonstrandum. So this is great. We've just solved the problem. Remember I said that I've never specified how many men or women are in the villages. I've not put any restrictions on the preference list. We've just shown that the stable marriage problem can always be solved. That's really, really, really cool.
Have we? We've shown that every woman has done as well as she can do. Have we shown that all the men have done?
Right. Remember, for an instability to arise, both the men and women have to prefer it. So as long as the women can't do any better, it doesn't matter so much what the men think.
So
really
how the
cares?
men did is regardless. No woman is gonna leave her man.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
So we've solved the problem, but as mathematicians, we're curious. So a solution to one problem leads to new questions. And the first question would be, are there different ways to solve the problem? So we have found, using this algorithm, one way to arrange stable marriages for everyone in the village. But you can imagine that there might be multiple ways. And you can imagine also
of course there are.
Well, so then you might ask how they compare. And I'm going to state a remarkable theorem about this, but first I should make a definition. Let's say I'm one of the women in the dating pool. Let's say I'm Charlotte. I'm going to say a possible husband for Charlotte is any person that she is matched to in some stable marriage configuration. So we've proven that Collins is possible for her, but there might be some other men that she would be assigned to, she would be married to in one of these other solutions to the stable marriage problem.
So you're saying there could be a stable set of pairings where she could have got Darcy or Bingley?
Yeah, right. It's possible a priori.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Here, now we can state the second theorem. This algorithm, so the algorithm due to Gale and Shapley that I just described, this algorithm assigns every woman simultaneously her best possible husband. So what I mean by this is that in any solution to the stable marriage problem, every single woman does no better than the assignment that I've described here than the assignment from this algorithm. And maybe I should say the girl proposing algorithm, because remember the way it works is the women propose to the men. This is a really, really remarkable result that says that the solution to the stable marriage problem found by this algorithm is simultaneously optimal for all the women.
So you're making an even bolder claim about this algorithm.
Absolutely.
What?
It has an even more remarkable property than described previously. Firstly, it solved the stable marriage problem. It
optimal for
arranged
the
stable
woman.
marriages for everyone in the village. But even more than that, it did it in such a way that every woman simultaneously does the best that she possibly can. So
Right.
that's crazy.
Okay. We're not commenting on the men, though, or the recipient of the proposal.
Well, so that brings me to theorem number 3, which is that this algorithm, so the algorithm in which the women propose to the men, assigns every man his worst possible wife. So the women all do the best that they can in any solution to
Wait,
the
what?
stable marriage problem, and the men all simultaneously do the worst that they
That's a
can
bold claim.
in any solution to the stable marriage problem. So it's much better to propose than to be proposed to. So it turns out that these two theorems have the same proof. You can interpret the argument for this one as proving this theorem as well. That actually wasn't noticed for about 10 years. So the original statement of the algorithm had the men proposing. This was the 60s after all. And they noticed right away that every man gets his best possible wife. Interestingly, it wasn't until about 10 years later that they noticed that every woman gets her worst possible husband, even though the argument is exactly the same. So this might be a
What?
commentary on the
I need
sexism
to
of
see the math.
the language in which this problem is couched. But anyway, the women are proposing today, so they're going to do the best, and let's see how this works. So I'm going to prove this using something called proof by contradiction. In particular, I'm going to assume that this statement is false, that there is some woman who is not assigned her best possible husband by the algorithm I just described. And then I'm going to find something wrong with that supposition. So therefore, this theorem must be true. And even more precisely, the way we describe the algorithm is a series of proposals that happen over time. So I'm going to consider the first woman who is rejected by a possible husband. I'm going to show that there's a problem with the situation. This woman can't exist. But let's suppose right now that woman W is the first that is rejected by a possible husband. So what does this mean? That means that there's the man that she's assigned to by the algorithm. I'll write M some algorithm as a way to think about the man that she's assigned to by the algorithm we just described. But there's some other man that she likes better who rejects her. Okay, so how does this happen? Well, because this woman prefers this man, at some point she would have proposed to him. Now he is only going to reject her proposal if there's some other woman, I'll write W prime for some other woman, who he likes better and who also proposes to him. So if this man receives 2 proposals, but he likes this woman better, then he will reject her.
Yeah, but how
So
is
remember,
the
this
man
woman
getting the
is
worst?
meant to be the first woman who is rejected by somebody she likes better than the person she ends up with in the algorithm. Okay. But in order for this man to be possible, this man that she likes better to be one of her possible husbands, that means there's some stable marriage configuration that pairs these two together, in which these two end up being married.
What?
But we already know that this man likes this woman even better.
Whoa.
This woman rejects her. Okay, so how does this happen? Well, because this woman prefers this man, at some point she would have proposed to him. Now he is only going to reject her proposal if there's some other woman, I'll write W prime for some other woman, who he likes better and who also proposes to him. So if this man receives 2 proposals, but he likes this woman better, then he will reject her. So remember, this woman is meant to be the first woman who is rejected by somebody she likes better than the person she ends up with in the algorithm. Okay. But in order for this man to be possible, this man that she likes better to be one of her possible husbands, that means there's some stable marriage configuration that pairs these two together, in which these two end up being married. But we already know that this man likes this woman even better than this woman. So this arrangement, this marriage is only stable if in that stable assignment she is with somebody that she likes even better. So this is an even better man. But that means that she would have previously proposed to him because this is somebody she prefers, and he would have previously rejected her. It's the contradiction. We said this woman was the very first one who's rejected by somebody she likes better. But we saw that that meant that there was somebody else who had been rejected even previously. And so that's the doctrine. It's a little subtle. It's not maybe an easy proof. But I claim if you think about it really slowly, it can make sense. In fact, so the mathematicians wrote this paper. It's a beautiful paper in the 1960s. But in the 1950s, the medical board in the US faced a problem in that the graduating medical students had to be matched to residency programs for further training. So these are doctors who've just received their degree, but those who have interviewed these medical students submit preference lists for residents, and then the computer does exactly this algorithm to assign graduating medical students to residency programs. And this happens every March in the US and in Canada at least.
Emily, we've seen that this algorithm favours one camp more than the others. It favours the proposer, the women in our example. When it is done with hospitals and residents, who does it favour?
Right. So it originally favoured the hospitals, but in the mid-1990s, people sort of figured this out and switched it over. So now it favours the residents. So there's an important corollary to this, which I haven't mentioned. This is maybe Theorem 4. Is that it's not possible to game this algorithm at all. So the residents do not do any better by lying on their preference list. If they really prefer Mercy to General to State, they should rank those hospitals in that order. There's no advantage to lying at all. And that's, again, a mathematical theorem that you can prove.
Bro, what the frick? What the I don't... What? Whatever. It doesn't matter, yeah. 송판. Salmon one. Lecture recordings on Thursday. Oh, we're still talking about stable theorems. I guess that's good. I need to buy an iPhone XR. No way the projection looks like that. That's trash. Oh, okay.
Of doctors on the right, with the big dots on the right, there's the same number of hospitals as doctors, each hospital wants to employ exactly one new doctor. The hospitals have a preference over all the doctors. So with each hospital, on the left of the hospital, we see the preference list of this hospital over all the doctors, and the same on the right. So the leftmost is the most preferred doctor for each hospital. Same, the leftmost hospital that's being displayed on the list on the right is the most preferred hospital of each doctor. And so we saw how this, so what we wanted to achieve is we wanted to match exactly one doctor to each hospital, such that we don't have a so-called blocking pair. So a blocking pair is a hospital and a doctor that would rather be matched to each other than to the solution that we provide. Then to whomever they are matched in the solution that we provide. So they don't want to leave our system and run off with each other. So how did this algorithm work? Well, the hospitals proposed. So each hospital proposes to a doctor. The hospitals take turns. So a hospital proposes to their most preferred doctor. The doctor accepts if they don't have a job yet, or if they're currently matched to a worse hospital. So we created our first match. Now we go to the next hospital. It proposes to its most preferred doctor. The doctor accepts because, well, the doctor doesn't have a job yet. So this continues. So at some point we encounter situations where the doctor might already have a job and they need to decide what to do. Right? So in this case, the top doctor on the right already has a job, but now they get a better offer. So actually, they quit their previous job and joined a new hospital. So they are now matched to the yellow hospital. And if the doctor is already matched to a better hospital, then they don't accept the new job offer. Right? So now, what we want to do is, well, first of all, prove that this algorithm always terminates. If you just see a description of the algorithm, it might not be obvious. Maybe there's a cycle, maybe doctors keep switching hospitals, maybe in a cyclic fashion, and this keeps happening, and
doesn't even look
the
that
algorithm
clunky.
finishes. So the first thing is, why does it finish at all? The second thing we want to show is that, well, it finishes in a reasonable number of steps. It could be the case that the algorithm wants an exponential number of steps. This could be plausible.
Let me just pull up an image or something. Alright, I guess you're seeing that for a bit. Oh, it extrudes 35 millimeters. Yeah, whatever, 35 millimeters. Oh, $7. I can buy it, sure. Do I have an Amazon account? I don't think I do. Wait, I already have an Amazon account? No way. Oh wow, okay, so I do have an Amazon account. What have I bought before? I've never put anything before. Yeah, like a lot. When I put the whack on, what is it called? Thursday 21st of September. Not sure.